Paul George is an amazing defender in basketball, and today I am going to break down his defensive skills so that you can implement them in your own game. Let's go down to the clipboard. Let's check out how Paul George plays defense. So first I'm going to talk about the transition game that he has from defense to offense. Here we have Paul George right there. Now, his defender receives a pass. He was playing help defense. His defender his offensive player receives a pass. He goes and contests that shot. Now, his hand is up in the way of the shot, and what he does is he flies by his defender. However, he does not make contact. He goes around his defender. Now, this is something that he does quite a bit. There's two ways of contesting a shot. There's recovering, doing some stutter steps, and having your hand up, and then turn and box out that player who's shooting. Or you can do what Paul George is doing here, which is contesting the shot, running past his offensive player while staying out of the way, and then noticing that, hey, that shot's going to miss, is going off the back of the rim, which means it's going to be popping out in this direction. So what Paul George does now is to sprint down court. Now, you may be saying, okay, well, he's in a perfect prime position to stay where he is, pop back, and be the outlet player, but in my opinion, these two players, one of them can be an outlet player themselves. One player or the other here can be the outlet player on this side looking for Paul George down court when Paul George goes and runs down court or sprints down court. This is something that you can do as a player yourself. And that's what you can do when a player shoots the three-point shot from above the three-point line. Now, what we see here is the offensive team actually gets an offensive rebound off of the defensive player here. Now, what happens is Paul George is pretty well down on the other end of the court, and he needs to now recover. His ability to recover quickly is very good. Now, one of the things that he does, because he is the trailing player, he goes and guards a lot of the time the player who gets the ball at the point, because for obvious reasons, there's no sense in him trying to go and defend somebody in the low post when he's way up here. So, what he does is he goes and defends that top player. And because of this, when a player is very happy with taking threes, which means that a player takes a lot of threes, they're really willing to take a lot of threes, he is generally the guard or the player at the point, especially off of a offensive rebound. Now, because of this, Paul George recognizes that, and look at what happens. Paul George sees that, and now he's going to contest and block that shot. And notice how he blocks that shot. He doesn't go all the way in front of the player's body at first. He goes on that right side because he is a right-handed player who is shooting the ball. And because of that, he's able to now focus on that ball, gets 100% of that ball, no foul, and now he's able to go 3-on-0, and of course finishes with a huge dunk. Now here we have Paul George in the middle of the key playing defense on player 37 from the Celtics. Now, what we see here is the ability for Paul George to play really strong defense guarding multiple players. So what he's doing here is he's got his hand out, and we're going to see that in 2 seconds. He's got his hand out, he's got his other hand out, he's being wide. Pretty well any pass that goes in this area of the court, even if this player was to drive, he's going to be able to go and cut off that pass or at least make it a hard shot. And because of this, he's able to now guard two players. That's essentially what he's doing, and same as this player. So we have Paul George and we have player number 21. From there, this player is guarding two players. Paul George is guarding two players. And this is a really strong trap. We have the outlet player, Williams, who, if this was a long pass, that looks like Williams, could be Patrick or whoever, but basically this is the ability to trap that a lot of teams don't do. So we've got a trap here, we've got one player guarding two players, another player guarding two players, and then a player guarding the long lob pass. So this is a really good defensive team. And this is a pretty good defensive coach that the Clippers have. Now, because of this trap, And the way Paul George plays the trap, which is having his arms out wide, he's able to now cut off or at least get close to intercepting that pass. And because of being able to guard such a wide area, he's able to go in and get that block. And that's all started from his ability to guard such a wide angle of the court, and that allows him to be in position to block that shot. Now here's another great example. Even though he's playing really strong deep help defense, he is able, with his length, but also his ability to be quick. If you're playing this deep on defense, you have to be really quick. So if you are a really quick player with the ability to cut off passes, you could bait the offensive guard or the player who's playing at the point. You could bait him into passing to your player by playing super deep like we see here. And because of that, if you are able to recover quickly and you've got the ability to outstretch your arms, or you know to outstretch your arms, then you could play very similar to Paul George here, where he's able to cut off that pass. Now, this is another great example. So we have Paul George, where this is a nice transition defense. So he's coming back on defense. They're making a really long pass. And because he is able to know how much of a risk to take when trying to cut off a pass, because he knows how fast he really is, he's able to make steals like that. So by having your hands up, by really watching where that offensive player is going to pass that ball, by having the peripheral vision to watch your man but also watch the player who has that ball, you're going to be able to pick off passes that we see like this and that last pass pickoff that we just seen a few seconds ago. So here we have Paul George once again guarding two players, and he is smack dab right in the middle. His hands are up and ready. He's guarding these two players out on the perimeter. We've got a player who's cutting towards the rim, and because of that, that player makes that pass, and Paul George is ready. He knows that wherever that pass goes, he's going to try and intercept it. And as we can see, his body is already going in that direction of that ball. And because of that, he is going to be able to pick off that pass. Now, if he missed that pass, it wouldn't have mattered all that much, because by lunging for that pass, he would have been able to easily recover out to that player who may be taking that three-point shot. And if that player made an extra pass, we would have had Kawhi Leonard, who would have been popping out anyways, because he was ready to make that move. He was already facing that direction. Paul George would have recovered out. This would have been an extra pass, but it would have been closed off, and we would have still been in a strong man-to-man. Williams guarding 13, and we would have then had, I think that's Harold guarding him, Williams guarding this player, and we're all set. Now we see Paul George right here. Now the great thing about Paul George is he is able to guard multiple positions, and to be able to do that, you really need to be strong, really need to work out. Of course, height does sometimes come as an advantage, but as a 6'2" player myself, I was able to guard multiple positions as well. Even though I'm 6'2", at the time of me playing, when I was going down to the States to play, I was 6'2" and I was 200 pounds. And because of my weight, and my strength, I was able to guard anyone who was a guard all the way to a forward. And I even was able to guard a center every once in a while. Occasionally, there was a 7'1" Australian guy, and I was able to guard him really well. But of course, height does come an advantage to him. He's almost a whole foot taller than me, but because I had a lower center of mass and I knew how to use that, I was able to move him out of the perimeter quite easily. And then on offense, the other way around, he was not really able to guard me until I got down to the low post. But let's get back to Paul George and how he plays defense, especially how he's able to switch off and defend the switch. So as we see here, they call for a switch, especially that center. He's calling for a switch. So Paul George takes that player, but he knows that this player, he's going to go and ask for the ball out on that perimeter. One of two things is going to happen. That player is going to set a screen, or he's going to pop out, and he's going to be then asking for the ball going towards his right hand, which is what we see here. His right hand goes up. Now, Paul George is peeking over his shoulder, and this is something that you can do. And because of that, he has his hand ready to go and pick off that pass. So how he's able to do this is when that player goes and catches that ball or goes to catch that ball, Paul George goes around him. You're not really allowed to reach over his back, but you are allowed to reach around him with as long as you're not making contact with his body. And because of that, he's able to poke it away. He's not going for the ball himself, but he's able to poke it away and hit it towards his other player who's playing beside him. And because of that, that player is able to get it, and they're able to get that ball down court. Now, here we have Paul George on a fast break defending basically a one-on-one, or it could be turned into a 4-on-2 because we have 4 players who are coming down, could be even a 4-on-3. But either way, he knows how to run the principle of verticality, which means that your feet, when you get in front of that player, need to be planted, or you need to be jumping straight up in the air. You cannot be jumping forwards into a player, and because of that, his hands are straight up and his body is pretty well straight, and because of that, he's able to get that block, and he's able to go the other direction as long as that ball doesn't bounce back into the net, which it doesn't. And how he's able to get there is to recover and to take big steps to get in front of that player and to stay straight up, not making all that much contact until he goes for that ball and he gets contact with that ball, and they're able to get that turnover. So here we have that once again, but without the fast break. So what we're having here is Paul George is playing really strong help defense, and he plants both of his feet. He's able to then jump straight up. Remember, it's called the principle of verticality, which means that even though your feet are not on the ground, you are allowed to access and operate in the ground above your feet as long as your body and your arms are straight up and you make no contact with that player. Even if your arms are down and your body makes contact, but you're going straight up, that's not a foul until those arms that are not straight up make contact with that player, not including the ball. Now, what happens here is he goes straight up. He's able to contest that shot. That player now needs to go and try and get that ball around Paul George so that Paul George doesn't block it. And in turn, Paul George is able to get that block. And that all came from playing strong help defense, access the ground, make basically a claim to that ground. And he jumps straight up. He actually jumps a bit backwards, but his body is straight above his feet. And because of that, that player, if he really wanted to get a foul, he would have shot literally over top of Paul George's head because Paul George's hands were down. But he goes around trying to get around Paul George instead of trying to shoot over him, and because of that, Paul George is able to get that block. I hope that this video helps you become a better defender and defend just like Paul George. If it does, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.